Welcome to Phantastical Careers with yours truly, Kelli Bertinelli. On this episode, I have the great privilege of interviewing the founder of a local nonprofit. I find out about things all different ways. Listeners send in suggestions, or I just run into really interesting people at all of the conventions and just events that I attend in the galaxy. But I found out about this one because I got lost, actually. So I asked directions from this tall man in a black cloak in a dark alleyway, and he recognized my voice, and he suggested that I reach out to Alyson Hope, the founder of the Vampire Rehabilitation Foundation. I did some research, and this organization has been making such a difference in the local community that I thought it was really worth bringing to the attention of our listeners. So here we have Alyson Hope on to share herself all about this fascinating and definitely underrepresented career. So welcome, Alyson. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you so much for such a warm welcome. I am a huge fan of your work, and I'm really excited to be here.
Well, thank you for working me into your schedule. I know you are so busy, just doing good work. So how did you get started in this field?
Yeah, so I've actually got started pretty young in this field. I kind of always knew this was something that I wanted to pursue. So even as young as high school, I was volunteering at our local shelter just in the area, and I was able to get some really just invaluable experience there, met a lot of great people, and really just confirmed my passion for this industry. And so worked really hard, worked 2 part-time jobs to put myself through business school, and then when I graduated, I started my own foundation. When I was young, I remember seeing homeless vampires, and I always just thought that they looked, really, I don't know, they just always looked pale and hungry, and I just wanted to help them. And so I think that's really where my passion for this comes from. It's just something I've always wanted to do.
Well, that's how change happens. People see a problem and they decide to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Pardon me if I yawn, but we're recording a little later than usual. Excuse me. Sorry. What specific services does your foundation provide to vampires?
Oh, sure. Yes. So we are a full service facility. So we offer room and board. And actually, recently, Crypt.com rated our coffins 4.7 stars, which, fun fact, is higher than most of the hotels in our area. So thank you, Crypt.com, for that.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we were very surprised, very honored. But we also want to do everything that we can to set our vampires up for future success. So we work with the local community college to enroll them in classes, night classes only, of course. We help them improve their credit scores, and once they're ready to start looking for employment, we help them clean up their resumes. Most vampires, how do I say this nicely? They're not super familiar with modern technology, but I will tell you, printing a resume on paper is usually perceived as way more professional than a sticky red mess written with a quill pen. So we try and help them just, again, integrate into, normal, human society. We want to see humans and vampires getting along, and that's one of the ways we like to help.
Is there a catalyst, or what George Bergethal from Mystic Ventures calls an aha moment that, inspired you to start this foundation?
Yeah, no, there absolutely was. And thank you for asking, because I love telling this story because I find a lot of people relate to it. So when I was 8, there was one night that my parents and we were leaving our local theater. We had just seen a production of Once More with Feeling.
Oh, so good.
And it's honestly, it's still to this day one of my favorites. But yeah, as we were leaving, this guy just jumped out of the shadows and kind of attacked my dad. And the guy ran off, but my dad was kind of, writhing on the ground for a little while. And then he jumped up and started attacking my mother, which was crazy to see as an 8-year-old.
Traumatizing.
Yes. And next thing I knew, this blonde chick just jumped out of the shadows, and all of a sudden both of my parents were little piles of dust. And this girl, as she was leaving, I caught her eye for a second, and she just looked so burdened. You know what I mean? She just didn't really seem like she she didn't seem fulfilled in what she was doing. And so I knew in that moment that I wanted to do everything I could to save both her and, vampires and everyone from living in this vicious cycle of life and death. So that was really my moment of inspiration, I guess you could say.
Wow. Oh, most species turn into a puddle when they become an orphan, but you pushed through and have done the opposite of being bitter.
Resilience is something that I learned from my parents, so yeah.
Forgive me if this is an unjust stereotype, but the media has recently been painting vampires in a less than favorable light. Aren't vampires dangerous to humans?
Oh, not at all. In fact, this is, like you said, just a stereotype that the media really likes to play into. But not all vampires are evil. That's actually the mantra of my organization, is bringing vampires into the light. Because, yeah, I mean, they're powerful, but they're also kind and some of the most fiercely loyal people that I know. They only use violence as a last resort when they feel threatened. So you just have to show them kindness, and they'll gladly return the favor.
So, how do you find vampires to rehabilitate? Is there like a network, or, I mean, I haven't run into any in a couple of years, but because don't they usually only come out after dark?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you'd be surprised how many vampires you can find at your local blood bank.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. No. But seriously, yeah, so they do normally come out at night. Personally, I've always been a bit more of a night owl. I prefer sleeping in and staying up late, and I've always gravitated towards jobs that I can do at night. So Sarah, who's one of the first vampires that I helped, she was the cashier working at a gas station that I stopped at once during my commute. This was while I was working the graveyard shift at the local cemetery. Tom, he's actually one of our oldest vampires. He's nearly 206.
Oh, wow.
Which Tom he's a great guy. We have this bit, we always tease him that he's in his twilight years. He's a great guy. But I met him one night on my way to the gym. And then let's see, there was Lilith. She ran a roadside stand selling peaches. Amber was my doctor when I broke my arm a few years ago, and I met Derek on my soccer team. There's so many, but yeah, vampires. They're if you are keeping an eye out for them, they're around.
Well, and it sounds like they actually have like a great social life, which is just so encouraging, because sometimes when people are different,
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
kind of isolate.
And that's something that I think that they do have a decent social life, but a lot of times vampires do try and kind of hide who they are. And if like, so I'm able to kind of like recognize that a lot of the time. But yeah, that's again part of what my organization wants to do, is to help bring vampires into the light. So that's part of our goal.
So if I was a community member who was looking to volunteer or get involved with your foundation, what's your typical day look like? Like, how can people help?
So for me personally, every day I start by waking up at 5 p.m. and I go to the local blood bank and collect our daily vats of blood. So we take the stale blood that isn't fit for human patients anymore. It's kind of how bakeries will give away their bread from the day before. That's what the hospital does for us, but with blood.
I had no idea blood could go bad.
Yeah, most people don't. But red blood cells generally only last for about 6 weeks. And also, as an aside, for anyone considering going into this field, just remember that there really is a lot of blood involved. So if you get kind of squeamish around this stuff, this might not be the job for you. But anyway, after I pick up the blood, I take it to the VRF center and start setting up for breakfast with my coworker, Jenny. Jenny's actually a vampire herself as well, and she has been invaluable in helping the foundation's reputation among the vampire population. The rest of my day is mostly paperwork and maintaining the facility. Since we only have a handful of employees, I tend to be kind of a bella of all trades, if you will.
I know that some of our listeners aren't as familiar with vampires. So is there anything that is unique about working with them other than the whole blood thing?
Silver jewelry. It's something I've actually never worn the stuff myself, but most vampires do have a really bad allergic reaction to it, believe it or not. So it's something you just have to be really mindful of what you're wearing anytime you enter the facility. So that's something to look out for.
That is such an excellent point. I know I have a niece that I'm going to suggest starts volunteering, so I will point that out to her.
Yeah, absolutely. Send her my way.
It's been such a pleasure speaking with you, and I just know that just the work you're doing with the Vampire Rehabilitation Foundation is going to impact our society for years to come, and in just really fantastic ways. And it's ultimately one of the greatest encouragements to our listeners. You can make a difference with or without a college education as long as you care for vampires.
Yeah. And people. I mean, vampires are people too.
We're almost out of time, but before we go, do you have any goals for the future of the foundation you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for asking. I would love to see vampires fully accepted into our society. We've shunned them for far too long as a result of miseducation and fear, and both humans and vampires have suffered as a result. People fear that which they don't understand, so I hope to continue educating the public through resources and helping vampires not only to survive, but to come alive. The stakes have never been higher.
Well, there you have it, everybody. A new fantastical career that you can look into. And also one, I think, that's interesting because you can get involved at any stage of life. You can just be a volunteer and be passionate and, donate. I'm assuming you accept donations?
We do, yes. If you go to our website, which is vrf.com, we actually have a free currency exchange there, so we accept all forms of currency, and any donations are greatly appreciated and will be very helpful to our cause.
Oh, marvelous. Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining us as I explore unique vocations on our planet and beyond. We'll see you again next time on Phantastical Careers with Kelli Bertinelli.